Well, good morning, everybody. You know, the way the weather forecast has evolved over the last 24 hours is absolutely fascinating to me. And I want to show you a couple of the neat things you're going to get to see here in the next 24 to 36 hours. We're going to begin first by looking at some satellite data from yesterday. And there's a couple of just really cool things on this image. For example, look at some of the snow right in through here that actually melted throughout the day yesterday. You can kind of see it fading with time. We watched a pretty sizable complex of storms blow up right before sunset here into parts of Missouri, and then another storm that came right out of this part of Kansas going into southwestern Missouri. I actually got to drive into the northern storms last night as I was coming toward Columbia, this where I am this morning, and it was just, it kept me wide awake watching all the lightning. It was a great show last night as we came in. And as you can see in the overnight, those two different storms, one to the north, one to the south, they actually were quite deep in terms of their convection. I'll show you what they did in a few moments in terms of hail and total rainfall. But before that, just take a look at the mountain waves coming off of the Rocky Mountains here. And this deeper low that's trying to dig into this area today, watching it evolve, producing a fire threat to the south and then substantial snow to the north, it's just a neat thing to study. So I'm looking forward to showing you what that's going to look like. Okay, last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. You can see that complex of storms that rolled right here into parts of Missouri coming out of Kansas. And again, those were the storms we saw last night. And I bring this up and pinpoint these storms because we saw that the high-resolution NAM did an excellent job on predicting their timing and location. And we always look at those things to assess whether or not models were well initialized and whether we should continue to trust them as we go forward. Now, outside of that, we watched our next large system kind of come into the Pacific Northwest. And this is going to be the system that eventually curls up into that omega blocking pattern that's going to be sitting here. And I think it is safe to call it a blocking pattern now. It is now at least in the forecast for 10 days, and I think it's going to control the pattern for much of the next 10 days. So I'm always a stickler on those definitions because I don't want them to be carelessly tossed around, especially as we get into towards summer where blocking patterns are absolutely critical to the success of U.S. crops. So with that as a setup, let's go have a look at a couple things here. Just in the last 24 hours, looking where there's been some hail, these were the storms in through here, so we can see that they were putting down some smaller hail, which likely did some damage. I'm waiting to see what some of the reports look like this morning from those storms last night, but a lot of lightning, and it was really quite impressive to see. So this is where we get to the forecast, okay? With the system that's coming out of the southwestern United States, we've got strong winds on the backside, very strong winds. We have strong winds on the south side, and tucked in the middle, winter storm warnings, winter storm watches, winter storm advisories that kind of line the mountains here throughout the four corner states and get up into parts of Wyoming and even in to Montana. Now, meanwhile, we still have flooding down here in the southeast. And as we look forward in this forecast, this is going to be an area that continues to stay very, very wet. But the contrast between how open the Gulf of Mexico is here to delivering moisture versus how it is just completely shut off to the dry air that's coming out of the southwest here into Texas and Oklahoma, it's a pretty amazing contrast. I'm going to show it to you in just a few seconds. But the jet stream is doing this right now, all right? And this is the large ridge building up the west coast that will eventually see one trough sneak in like this, another one like that, and what it'll do is it'll kind of take this jet stream pattern and send it into something like this. And what you get when you have a pattern like that is more north-south flow or meridional flow than zonal, which means west to east. And as a result, the pattern gets stuck. And if it gets stuck like that for a while, it can really just grab hold of the weather systems. Now, what I'm most fascinated about today is this piece right in through here, especially the little jet streak on the southern side of this. Because what this is doing is helping to create later on this afternoon a low. And that low is going to sit somewhere here, just off the front range, somewhere sitting in northern Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And what's amazing about this is, can you see where the Gulf moisture comes in? It gets pulled around on the backside here and pulled around on the backside there. Whereas the really dry air comes out of the Great Basin through California into Arizona, New Mexico, and gets pulled through this part of Texas. So the contrast in the moisture is what's going to be driving these weather systems. And I think you're going to find this quite fascinating as to what this is going to do. Now, to understand these types of storm systems tucked in so close to the mountains, you have to think about the topography of Colorado as an example. And what's really neat about Colorado, and I remember my research advisor in graduate school, his name's Dr. Bob Rauber. We had one whole lesson, I'll never forget, it was a 2-hour lesson just to discuss this right here. So between Denver and Colorado Springs, there's a pretty big elevation change. And the mountains that sit right in through here, there's major elevation change, can have a significant impact on the placement of the snow. And we did a whole forecasting exercise of trying to assess exactly where a winter storm would be most effective in this particular area. So we looked at a lot of topographical maps like these. We used to have these relief maps on the walls. It was amazing to kind of touch and feel the elevation changes in the west. And what we can say about it is this is what you end up getting. This is from the National Weather Service out of Pueblo, Colorado. And if you notice, look at the snowfall amounts, hyper-local with respect to the topography. Now, if you slide one National Weather Service office to the north, so this is Pueblo, let's go up to the Boulder, Colorado office. There is that region of higher elevation. And so the probability of getting at least 6 inches of snow here, of course, well over 100%. Then as you slide over toward DIA, which is Denver International Airport, and then kind of along the front range here, you can see the impact of what the change in elevation is going to have. But there is the potential with this setup to getting some huge snows in here. There will likely be a few places that top out. I think they'll top out well in excess of 12 inches, possibly pushing that 2-foot mark out of this system. Now, how long it lasts determines how long we keep easterly flow. Everyone in the front range of Colorado knows the moment you get a westerly wind coming over those mountains, you get downslope winds, the temperatures jump up into the 60s, and at this time of year can even get in the 70s, and the snow just melts right away. But when I think about the high plains, this area, and the moisture that's coming into it, this is an outstanding storm system to deliver good moisture at this point in the season. So really quite fascinating to forecast. Now on the southern side of it, okay, this is later on this afternoon, I want you to see this area right in through here. What you're looking at is relative humidities. And the relative humidities coming out of New Mexico into Texas and Oklahoma are going to be getting down into the single digits down here in parts of western Texas. And they're going to be staying in the teens in this area. And when we combine that with the stronger winds that are expected in this area, for example, let's look at the 10-meter wind gust. So this is 30-foot winds. We're going to have 30, 40, 50 mile-an-hour gusts, possibly stronger than that back here, but blowing across this area. And that is why the National Weather Service has, in through parts of New Mexico and Texas and Oklahoma, an extreme fire risk. Now, I didn't show you this at the beginning, but if you go back to this animation, you can see yesterday, just as it cleared out, right through there, that is the burn scar from the previous fire that went through this area, the one that consumed over 1 million acres. So you can see it right in through this region. So we're quite concerned about what this could mean in terms of fire risk later on today. So please be prepared to be very aware of this situation in this part of Texas. Now, on the moist side of this, we have the risk of strong to severe storms today in parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri again. Tomorrow, this opens up from eastern Texas all the way up to Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, with a new enhanced area coming out of parts of Oklahoma into Arkansas. And then as we get into the day on the 15th, we're going to watch that slide further to the south, but only a marginal risk is currently being forecast at this stage. Also, I apologize. My fan automatically kicked on in my hotel room, and I don't have control of that fan. I can't even turn the system off, so hopefully we'll be able to remove some of that noise here as I post-process this video. But if you can still hear it, I just want to let you know what that was. All right, so let's dig into our first model. Let's go to the high-res NAM to pick this up at 8 a.m. this morning. We're going to watch this whole system unfold. Let's blow that up once. There we go. All right, by this evening into tonight, we can see the complex of storms out ahead of this, the drier air to the south, and right in through this area in the backside. This is where we're bringing in some rain into Nebraska, big-time snows into Wyoming and the Front Range of Colorado. Now, keep an eye out. Remember, this low that's here is not actually fully a part of that omega block just yet. It's going to come in here into Arizona in a few moments. And as we play through the overnight hours tonight into early Thursday morning, complexes of storms move out of Missouri and Kansas toward Illinois, rain to the north, rain coming back into parts of Nebraska, and then the very heavy snows through early tomorrow morning right here, enhanced by the topography we just talked about. So playing through tomorrow midday, this is Thursday 3 o'clock, getting toward the evening. Our next focal area will go right into here. as where we're going to watch those severe storms begin to show up. So tomorrow night, on Thursday night, playing through the early morning hours on Friday, lined up through the Ohio River Valley, down back toward the Red River Valley. That is where this next kind of evolution of heavy rainfall and the potential for strong to severe storms is going to be. Maybe not so much here, but certainly back on the backside of this. It is still likely snowing through early Friday morning here in parts of Colorado, possibly into Nebraska, and then the upper level low that's part of that omega block. Watch this as I go back and forth. Can you see it spinning in Arizona? We cannot discount what that thing's going to do, because it's going to sit there and spin for a while. And already we can see the heavy precipitation being brought in to northern parts of Arizona, the Four Corners area. Some of this is going to be some extremely heavy snow. And that's just through the next 50 to 60 hours. And we've got more after that. You see the upper level pattern as it breaks off into the omega block. There it is. So we're fully established on that Thursday into Friday. We're going to watch this omega block last through the weekend into early next week. This is all the way out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's still technically there. You can see it, but it's starting to evolve just a little bit. So the block moves farther to the north. So that's, now we're out there. This is over a week that it's already in place. Meanwhile, much colder air comes in through the Great Lakes. We'll talk about the snow impacts possible here. But what I am most interested in seeing is if the northern edge of that omega block goes into Alaska. And we see that by Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, it is there. Now, the reason I'm curious about that is because around March 21st, 22nd, and out there in the 23rd, we talked about this yesterday, right? The development of the coldest, the coldest air here. But it appears that the subtropical jet is still helping in some way. And if you've heard me speak in the last couple of months, I got asked if I got to wishcast what I want for the central United States. I said I wanted a mid-March, a March 20th blizzard. And everyone's like, why? I said, well, if I could get a big storm system to come out of Colorado and just rip across the United States. On the northern side, I'm talking a foot of snow, just clobber the area. And on the southern side, wide open Gulf transport. The reason why I wishcast that, because late March snowstorms deliver moisture to the ground. And I am just worried about undoing the drought area that's already in this region. So can you keep that in the back of your mind? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if the atmosphere wanted to, it's at least giving me a signal that it could make a big storm system here. Come back to that in a second, okay? Keep that tucked away in the back of your mind. First, though, I got to at least show you what the model comparison is doing leading up to that time frame. GFS left, European right. Now, we've really diagnosed pretty carefully what's going on here through Thursday into Friday. So let's pick this up where the NAM leaves off. So this is Friday morning, playing through the middle of the day on Friday, where we watch the heavier rain slide here toward the south. At this same time, the deeper trough that is developing here, coming out of the kind of the eastern Canadian Prairie and the Hudson Bay area, is going to be producing some snow, and this low is going to sneak right into this area. It's in both models. Meanwhile, this whole time, our upper level low is sitting here, while the ridge is building like this. So this is Friday evening, getting into Saturday. This is now Saturday evening into Sunday. See, the low still sitting and spinning there. Heavier rains to the south. But on Sunday, that low that started off in parts of Manitoba and then went toward Ontario is now spreading its way to the east. And on the backside of it, strong northerly winds, the chance for even more lake effect snow, which is so rare to talk about in March, but it's possible, and snow showers into this area as the front finally clears. See the moisture here? This is still from where our omega block sits all the way out to next Monday. That's the low on the eastern side of it. So as we deal with some early week snow showers starting on Sunday, lasting through Monday in this area, we're going to watch much colder air dive all the way into the southeast. And here it is still. That's still part of that same system. Okay? Now, what happens in the midweek next week and beyond is that low has to start to come out. And this is getting out there to around March 20th, 21st. And some of the operational models are picking up on something going on here. So I just want to let you know that out that far, there's something to talk about day 10. Now, let's go look at what the totals are, and we'll kind of start to make one more go at what I think might happen March 20th, 21st, 22nd. This is the European model adding things up all the way through the next week. We're just going to take it out 1 week. So there's our total precip. We've had an ongoing discussion about the dryness here, the dryness in this area, and we know that the west is going to get a bit of a break simply because the ridge is there. But watch what that upper level low does here. Heavy rain south and east, right there, the upper level low. Okay, European model over to the GFS, same time frame, pretty good agreement overall, wouldn't you say? I like that. If we look at the snow side of it, here's the European model adding this up. There's this huge snows we talked about driven by the topography. Watch right here. This is starting Friday, getting into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. See the snow showers coming in, the lake enhancement we get right through here. That takes us out a week in terms of total snow. We compare that to the GFS, we get this. It is important to note that the GFS has got, with that late system, when is it? It's right here. This Thursday into Friday. Trying to drop a little bit of snow into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, but it's not showing up in the European. So what I want to do from here, after we've now seen these snows again, is just go talk to the models and ask them to give us a good idea on the probabilities and where they could change. So this is the who stays dry map. It stays driest here, and of course the west where the ridge is going in. The wetter side of this looks something like this. Probability of an inch here, over 90%. In this area, 50 to 70%. Chance of 2 inches, this is where our flooding threat's going to be. Chance of 4 inches even exists in Louisiana. It's just amazing to think that 5 months ago we were talking about Louisiana, most of the state being in D4 drought. And we've had such a wet winter in that area, we've seen so much of it go away. But we're just questioning, whoops, sorry about that. I don't want to show you that one. I'd like to show you this one. We're questioning whether or not after March 21st, 22nd, 23rd, if we do end up getting some sort of a low that crosses the country that could possibly deliver the knockout punch to some of these drier regions. And what I want you to see is this. The European model on its AI version gives us the end of the Omega block. This is the Sunday the 17th watch. It's still there the 18th, 19th, and 20th, still sitting and spinning. But take a look at this. That Omega block, the bottom part of it, that low, starts to kick out into the plains. This is on the 21st, and I see a trough here, and a trough there, and a trough there. And the question is, in this European artificial intelligence forecast model, if its goal is designed to minimize error, I want to be watching how well it does with this. So we got a little project. I have not yet shown you the European AI version of the model, and its upper level heights. But it is currently projecting a trough of low pressure, a deep one, coming right out of the panhandles, hooking over the Red River and making the turn. And that would be the setup with all of the antecedent cold air to make that big blizzard happen, possibly. Let's not be calling it a blizzard yet, but just a snowstorm and heavy rain to the south. So I'm a little excited about this. I want to see how well the model does with it. It's in the ensembles. It's in the artificial intelligence. Let's go have a look and see if it's there, because we need this to be changed. That's our current 100 centimeter or 40-inch soil moisture percentile. I'm thinking a lot about the growers that live in this area. I'm thinking about the dryness that's happened back here in the plains over the last 30 days. I mean, look at this. This whole area. Why is there fire risk in here? Because of this. And that dryness that extends into the upper Midwest. It's down into Texas. We get a monster that comes out like this in late March, and we put a big dent in this. Now, I told you earlier that that was a wish cast I had way back starting in January. And I'm just excited about it because there's a possibility. But you need to know I have no confidence out that far in it, right? That's why we're going to monitor to see if this continues to be a feature. The moment it goes away, I will definitely tell you if it does. But if it sticks around, we got a story. Now, we have to have the temperatures in place to help this out. And it does appear that the ensembles are helping with colder air to the north. And now the week 2 forecasts are beginning to show a bit more of a wetter signal here. I bet later today the GFS shows it as well. So what are the temperatures doing? Well, they're doing this today. Very, very warm in the midsection of the country. 60s and 70s making as far north as southern Minnesota. There's Thursday's highs. Remember, this will be where we have the severe weather risk. This is the colder air supporting the snow. Then we get into Friday. Now watch the transition starting in the Great Lakes first on Sunday here. then going forward into Monday. Much colder air diving into the south. I think Monday morning and Tuesday morning are our coldest mornings down here in the south and up toward the mid-Atlantic. And while some mild air makes a brief recovery here, it seems that once we get beyond that, some colder air starts to return. So over the next 7 days, which is what I just showed you, this is my latest frost map. So again, we're looking in gray at locations that could possibly see a frost. If we look out there day 5 through 10, there's the beginning of the cold air as this last bit of warmer air makes it stand here in the midsection of the country. So the frost risk is included in this, but then we know that time period right out here around the 19th, 20th, 21st, what happens after that is this. So you say, well, what could help that low form in this area? Keeping it mild here, cold there, everything runs right through the middle. So this is why I'm thinking that this beginning of this third week of March may have the right look to it. And it's not just there in the GFS, it's also in the Euro. Look at the temperature contrast. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. Now, the other part of this is, when does this temperature pattern begin to make a break? And we know that we've had this discussion about the MJO being the dominant control on that. And it's still showing phase 5, 6, 7 crash, okay? But the models are really waffling back and forth on this. So to show you one of them, the CFSV2 model, the temperature pattern week 3, week 4 in that model says bring the warmth back on. So this would be the beginning of April. The 27th through the 2nd, the 3rd through the 9th, which means we would have, if this verifies, rapid early planting in the midsection of the country. Now, on the precipitation side of it, just want to point out that the 27th through the 2nd, this model also sees something sneaking through here. We got to keep an eye on that to know if that is part of what I just discussed with you coming in around the 23rd, 24th. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on what this is. But I also need you to know the European model isn't bought into the same pattern. You see, over the next 30 days, this is what it's showing. As I play this out, so this is the 11th of March to the 11th of April, and then I take you all the way out here in this model and show you the 30 days ending on April 27th. It is really putting in the moisture into the country. I mean, take a look at that. To be honest, we need every bit of this to verify. We need the late snows here as well. We don't need the moisture here, but here we do. So we need to be seeing if this European model has some sense to it as to why it's doing this. But like I told you, the CFSV2 is bringing in the warmer temperatures. The European's like having none of it. It's trying to keep the cooler air around for most of April. And that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because given what's happening with our El Nino moving its way toward ISO-neutral conditions, history would say that this is what April should look like. So I just annotated a graph I've shown you a couple of times, but I stitched together all of those Aprils that had an El Nino that was fading toward neutral in spring. And we tend to be more mild across the northern tier of the U.S. We tend to have a lot of strong to severe storms everywhere inside of that red dashed line. But we didn't tend to be overly wet in the upper Midwest, Western Corn Belt, kind of northwestern Corn Belt, tend to be wettest along the south and southeast. But I've told you in the past, April is the most difficult month to forecast for the Northern Hemisphere, and to make any sort of sense of it is going to be difficult until we get everything with April inside of a 2-week window, okay? So just know these are preliminary thoughts and no guarantees. So I'm waiting on some new long-range information. I hope to put it in my Friday forecast video. So in the meantime, let's just leave it at that and go right to South America. Over the next 10 days, quite a bit of heat building into Paraguay, into parts of Brazil. You can see in both of these maps the day 0 to 5, day 5 through 10, while cooler air sits down into Argentina. But if you look at the precipitation, you can just see on these smaller maps, like there's a 10-day hole right there with very heavy rain to the south. Now, if I blow up the 10-day map, again, we're talking about this dry spot right in through here and what it could mean should it last. Because the model's just not predicting it lasting over the next 10 days. We can see that even in the ensembles, it's going to be possibly lasting beyond that. This is a hole where normally we can get 2 inches of rain no problem this time of year. That may take a considerable amount of time to fill in. You see the probability of getting the heaviest rains is in Argentina, coming into Uruguay and Rio Grande do Sul. But much below average precipitation in through this area is going to be a concern, and we just have questions as to how long it's going to last. So as the newer, longer range stuff comes in later this week and early next week, we'll kind of put that whole story together and see what that risk looks like as we move into, into the rest of this fall time period for South America. Certainly, this is supported with the analogs on what happens when there is an El Nino that's fading. So makes sense compared to the narrative we've been giving you. And with that, I'll stop it right there. Appreciate your attention today, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.